So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yisrael the prophet. We find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. And then not only this, we find then the existing news from around the world, primarily then obviously from Israel and also United States, and also the understanding of Iran trying to make friendships and the relationship with Israel and also with the United States, and the many skirmishes coming out of it. And then understanding obviously the holy instructions, because it's our, in quote, roadmap for the future. So then, as it was then explained before, during the time of the holy cities of the Messiah, prior of 1009, or then per the Creator's calendar, would be then 5009, if you then count the time as 0, or 6009 if you count as 1000, how this should be. Then we can understand the Greco and the Romans were the Gog and Magog of the time. Why do we understand this? Because the Messiah was very clear when he said 1,000 years would be granted for his kingship. So he did. After Yohanan and the first holy city, then there was roughly 1,000 years of his kingship. And then at the end of this time were then as if the world was ending, because the very directives of the world were then being destroyed. Thus then, when we find ourselves studying Gog and Magog of the time, it is precisely during a time prior of 1009 from the regular calendar, or 6009. So then, our time, the restoration period, as per then the instructions of Yisrael the prophet, chapter 1:8, as the cities are returning, the first holy city on the land of Cush, as per the instructions, we find this time prior of the combat of the end, Gog and Magog of our projected time is United States and Israel. Let's understand what goes on. When we read Zechariah, the 5th chapter, those are then couple of galals, or then simply a tube, as you would then write the holy instructions on the Megillah. But chapter 5 of Zechariah, it's not Megillah, it's galal. Is to be then folded into a tube, because it's the very origin of the word. Those are related with a couple of understandings of extermination via bombs. Try to understand then the holy words as for what they are. It's not one on the top of the other making an aircraft. Those are a couple of tubes, and then comes the extermination, and those couple of women. Those are the lustful spiritual sides of both of them. As then those Hebrews not obedient, as those from the Ishmaelic lineage not obedient, they are involved with the same lust. However, because of the understanding of the son of Ibrahim, Ishmael, and the son of Ibrahim, Yitzhak, then they have to be separated. So then, when you read then Galal, or Revelation, the 8th chapter, you find then the mountain, the burning mountain, is in fact one of the bombs, related with Israel then releasing a bomb on Arabia, precisely where then petroleum is at. That's what you get, your mountain burning of oil, where then third part of the oceans then are contaminated. The second then on springs of water is United States releasing a bomb on China. Thus then the springs of water. So then the situation is becoming very vivid and very 100% clear. So then, not only this, we find in the brick post this morning, then the Soviet Union is going to spend 59% more in their military. You can read this by yourself. It's very important, because the situation is becoming much more intriguing as we study and we clean ourselves away from the junkies of centuries of editing and changes, so then we become more aware of what's coming. So then, not only this, as we understand, reading then Soviet Union, US at PAR in hypersonic research, Deputy PM obviously is involved with it, then it explains very simply. It is then to increase the yearly defense spending by 59% in 21.5. What does it say? When we read then Yirmiyahu the prophet and also Daniel, you find a section in 11th chapter where then obviously both countries are uniting themselves under the socialism of trade. Previously, the Soviet Union was a socialism of force, military force. This time they are joining themselves, China and the Soviet Union, as a force of trade, socialism of trade. So then the news are becoming very vivid and very important, because whatsoever Yirmiyahu the prophet said was true. And there is another section of the spiritual side of galal or revelation where then Yirmiyahu the prophet wrote. But then it did not make any sense. Let's explain these very clearly so people then are aware of it. There are a couple of pits. A pit from the bomb on China and a pit from the bomb released on Arabia. When we read galal, you don't find only one pit. There are a couple of them. However, Yirmiyahu the prophet, when he explained then the spiritual understanding of the spiritual realms related with the consequences of the bomb, he used very strange scenarios. For instance, scorpions, or then locusts, or then horses with breath of fire. During the time of Yirmiyahu, did not make any sense. They thought he was a demoniac, and he wasn't. Because when the Holy Creator is then explaining what goes on, the Creator can't use Inferno's understanding of the spiritual realms. He must remain clean. So he had to use animals or bugs from the creation and not the demoniacs of the spiritual realm of the demoniacs, obviously. So then when we read galal or Revelation, there is only a section of the spiritual realm as it was described then by Yohanan, as he saw then those understandings, and he was explaining via those animals created by the Creator himself. He couldn't have used then those areas of the demonic realm because it's not part of creation. So then, when you read the 8th chapter of galal, you find then the mountain, the burning mountain, is the first bomb. This bomb is released by Israel upon Arabia. The second bomb is released from US onto China. So then we begin to understand both of them. As you understand in Zechariah the 5th chapter, you find a couple of galals, couple of tubes, and then you find the holy word later as extermination of. You find a couple of women. What can you deduce? The first son and the second son. What's going on in the world? China is preparing the authority of trade, so it's going to be given to the Ishmaelites. Those are the Arabs. Thus then the stick of authority of the son of Ibrahim, Ishmael, and then Yitzhak is then the returning of the holy cities. So then couple of tubes, couple of situations, couple of sons, trade and tabernacling, and you find a couple of bombs. So then when you read then galal, start making more sense. These mean there are combat plans of the Ishmaelites. Those are then generated by Israel alone. And then there is then the worldwide persecution of the holy cities of the end, where the entire world is going to be engaged upon. So the prophet was absolutely 100% true. Though Yirmiyahu was then murdered, whatsoever he wrote was true. Every word. every sentence, every paragraph, and most importantly, these makes obviously the layers. Yeshayahu's layers were absolutely true. And let's study and find out more if we can ever find other manuscripts of Yeshayahu. Whatsoever strange they are, we should read and evaluate because those are true. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.